The Super 6 jackpot for Friday, March 5th is $250,000. Super 6, more jackpot money.
More jackpot money, more reasons to play this game. More money for way. Super 6, a bigger jackpot game.
On Friday, March 5th, there'll be thousands of dollars to be won. A lotto jackpot of $155,000. A new home, car, or that college education.
Lotto, you have to be in it to win it.
Next lotto jackpot, $155,000.
This evening on the VC3 News Update, the Ministry of Health, Wellness and the Environment launches vaccine drive in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. The St. Vincent and the Grenadines Community College launches Wellness is Wealth initiative. And Braxa completes construction of a new radiology room at the Levi Latham Health Center. Join us at 7 p.m. for these stories and more on the VC3 News Update.
Relative to the COVID-19 vaccine, and we also talked about vaccine hesitancy here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. With us, as we did last week, we have Dr. JERROL Thompson in studio with me. Of course, Dr. Thompson is the special advisor to the COVID-19 task force here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and he's also an infectious diseases specialist. And really, we like to refer to him as our in-house consultant in the medical field on this program. We also have Dr. Malcolm Grant, and he is the district medical officer for the Southern Grenadines, based on the Grenadine island of Union. And we have all the way in Maryland, our very own Dr. Gary Michael Dennie, who is a social scientist and history professor in Maryland. Welcome back, gentlemen. Last week, I can't recall at which specific juncture we took a break, but we'd like to pick up from where we left off in terms of the discussion. Enough to say that the discussion generated so much interest last week that we were asked to continue the discussion. It's a good time to continue the discussion. Today, we went full scale into our mass vaccination campaign here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We had a big walk-in at Victoria Park. You could also walk in at any center, health center throughout St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So let's start on that good note, this current initiative. Dr. T.
Well, I tell you something, I was so pleased today. It really warmed my heart walking into Victoria Park and seeing hundreds of individuals. Matter of fact, 427 persons vaccinated today just at Victoria Park alone, and hundreds more across the nation. This is a marvelous start, Teresa, and it has given some greater level of faith that this is achievable. The vaccination of at least 70% of our people, and we are on our way to community and population immunity here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. To see young men, sons, bringing their mothers, to see daughters and granddaughters bringing their grandfathers, and them also coming along and receiving the vaccination is an inspiration that this process works. And I really want to thank all those persons who were involved, yourself and Shanika and the CMO and her team. I think it's a marvelous job done, and I could see them doing this better and better and giving confidence to the onlookers who are a little more hesitant, who are wondering whether they should. Come on down. We want to invite you to come down to Victoria Park or come down to the clinic near you. Or if you want to wait, in just a matter of a couple of days, we will be announcing when we're coming to Georgetown, to Richland Park, to Rose Hall, to many of the other areas for these very large campaigns on a weekend. But almost all of these clinics are going to be open to you, whether in the north or in the south, in the Grenadines and Union Island. I think that this is a marvelous day and a huge success for the vaccination campaign. And I'm very, very proud of what we did today.
Okay, Dr. Grant, I know you're in the Southern Grenadines. How was it in your neck of the woods in terms of vaccinations?
I think we had about 20 today, but in total, since we started on the 14th of February, we have between 150 and 200. But you know, it's gradually picking up, and what's heartening is seeing folks who initially said no, there's no way I'm taking the vaccine, and that person coming forward at this point in time. That's extremely heartening, and I expect as more people have the vaccine, and as Dr. Thompson alluded to, others looking on to see what has happened. Did they have any of these side effects that were predicted by the naysayers? And they obviously did not. You're going to have more and more individuals within the community who are sitting on the fence coming forward to take their vaccines respectively.
Okay, thank you very much. You did mention the fact that there were people who were skeptical initially, but you actually saw a couple of them coming to get vaccinated. What do you think is responsible for tipping the scales?
I think it's a few factors: public education campaign, them doing further research, them seeing others who have taken the vaccine, and you know, the predictions of those who were are detractors of the vaccine not coming to the fore as such, and people trusting the message. And you know, I think it's only going to get better from here, from a national point of view, in terms of vaccine acceptance and us getting closer to our herd immunity numbers, which is a little over 70,000. But I'm feeling, I don't want to say quite a groundswell as yet, but I'm feeling some traction, and I'm seeing those who were absolutely against the vaccine in the first place. I've seen at least maybe about five to 10 of those come forward, and those, remember, would be associated with others with a similar point of view. And I think by them coming forward, their friends, their associates, etc., are now going to be having second thoughts, and it's only a matter of time before they would be joining those who have been vaccinated.
Thanks. Dr. Dennie, you are on the outside looking in. What does your crystal ball say?
Well, I prefer to look back rather than look forward in this instance, because it seems to me, in fact, I do know, the idea of vaccine hesitancy is a relatively new phenomenon in St. Vincent. Because if you go back in the 1970s, we have been vaccinating people for a very, very long time. I remember as a student at St. Mary's Roman Catholic School being vaccinated at least twice. And of course, childhood vaccination is deeply embedded as part of our vaccine regime in St. Vincent to protect our children. So what we are seeing is a new phenomena, and what the successes that we are now having at this the breakout of the campaign, it demonstrates perhaps a resilience within the Vincentian collective mindset that vaccines are something we have done successfully for quite a while, and we ought not to let these naysayers and prophets of doom and gloom fool us to ignore the advice of our doctors.
I want to go back to this question because we have questions coming in already. Somebody wants to know if they can take 2 different vaccines, but I want to go back to the whole question of the vaccine, a myth, the vaccine changing one's DNA. I'm hearing this really far too often.
Yes.
Can we really talk some more about that and explain why this just isn't possible?
Yes. I think an extension of what Dr. Grant and what Mike has been saying, and I'll get to that question, is that as doctors, we took a Hippocratic oath. This is something that has been born out of antiquity, goes back many years. Doctors taking this oath. And it says, treat the sick to the best of one's ability. Preserve patients' privacy and teach the secrets of medicine to the next generation. It goes on. The core of the oath is that doctors and I have pledged, I will apply dietetic measures for the benefit of the sick according to my ability and judgment. I will keep them from harm and injustice. I will neither give a deadly drug to anybody who asks for it, nor will I make a suggestion to this effect. This is a core part of that oath. And I want to say, over my 38 years as a medical doctor, I've learned a lot about life and how precious it is. And I will never and could never recommend something that I know is going to be harmful to a patient. And so when somebody tells me that the drug has in a chip, I have to tell them, no, it does not. When they tell me that there's a mark of the beast in it, it does not. When basically say it will sterilize people, we know that it will not. And we want to encourage you that these sayings, you got to ask, where did those videos come from? Who sent them to you?
We'll talk some more about that when we come back from our first break.
Sorry about that.
Where did they come from indeed?
Yes.
This evening on the VC3 News Update, the Ministry of Health, Wellness and the Environment launches vaccine drive in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. The St. Vincent and the Grenadines Community College launches Wellness is Wealth initiative, and Braxa completes construction of a new radiology room at the Levi Latham Health Center. Join us at 7 p.m. for these stories and more on the VC3 News Update.
On Friday, March 5th, there'll be thousands of dollars to be won. A lotto jackpot of $155,000. A new home, car, or that college education.
Lotto, you have to be in it to win it.
Next lotto jackpot, $155,000.
More jackpot money, more reasons to play this game. More money for way, Super 6 a bigger jackpot game.
The Super 6 jackpot for Friday, March 5th is $250,000. Super 6, more jackpot money.
More jackpot money, more reasons to play this game. More money for way, Super 6 a bigger jackpot game.
You were talking about where did these fake videos or what have you that's going wrong, where did they originate? What are the origins?
I think people have to ask themselves those questions. And some have originated, unfortunately, from some far-right groups. There's an entity we call America's Frontline Doctors, who've been pushing a lot of the old medication, hydroxychloroquine, the Donald Trump hydroxychloroquine thing, and the ivermectin, and drugs that have not been approved by the FDA to be used for COVID-19, but they see some benefit in it, and they've been pushing those things. But some of these older things, they've actually been going back for many years, believe it or not, even from the time of smallpox. When persons were scratched, people were saying the smallpox scratch was like the mark of the beast. And clearly, all those things were disproven. But somehow it has arisen again. And individuals, I think, some people are profiting from it, other people are having some fun with it, and there are other people who just simply believe in it. I think the main thing is that we have to put out what we consider as being the truth and the facts. And bit by bit, person by person, we have to just convince them that these things are not true. And as they see more and more people benefit, and they don't think. One more important thing, if all these doctors, I took the vaccine, Dr. Grant took the vaccine, other individuals have taken the vaccine, and I'm fine, you know what I mean? And I think that this is going to go a long way in showing people that these things are safe, they are effective, and that's why I think we really have to push ahead in terms of the details of the safety and the effectiveness of these particular vaccines.
Okay, Dr. Grant and Dennie, do you wish to weigh in on this?
Well, let me say this. When clinical trials were performed to determine the safety and efficacy of the vaccines, the comparisons within those trials is let's see what happened to those who took the shots versus those who didn't take the shots. So when the researchers tell us that the vaccine has 95% efficacy, they're not saying that 100 people got vaccinated, 95 persons were fine, and then 5% got ill. No. What they're in effect saying is that the persons who took the vaccine were 20 times less likely to get infected than those who did not take it. That's what we have to understand. The probability of getting sick if you don't take the vaccine is exceedingly higher if you're exposed to the virus, 20 times higher when the vaccines are 95% effective. So what that actually means in the real world is that those who take the vaccine, what you'll see is that they live, they don't get sick. And those who don't take the vaccine, they're the ones who will get sick and who are likely to die. So in a sense, the vaccine reveals its efficacy within the real world, because we'll see those who take the shots are the ones who do much better. Those who don't are the ones who are going to fall ill and die. And we want to prevent that.
Can you unmute your mic, please, Dr. Grant? Unmute.
So my apologies. Dr. Dennie had said a little earlier that St. Vincent has been a society that traditionally accepts vaccines. And, what has happened, I suspect, in the last 10, 15 years, we have seen, I call it the North Americanization of the society on a number of levels. We have basically embraced every and anything that sent us from the North, almost without questioning. And the anti-vaxxers message is no different. In other words, well, a doctor said this in the States, so it basically becomes gospel. And, what's disturbing is some quite intelligent people and supposedly responsible people within the community are propagators of this misinformation too, because I've gotten WhatsApps from one or two, and I've been flabbergasted. I mean, it's one in particular, I was absolutely shocked. So, you know, we have that challenge ahead of us. But I suspect as people, I think St. Vincent's still a personalized society. In other words, you know your neighbor, you know that they took the vaccine. Well, let me see what's going to happen to them. And okay, nothing has happened. They have survived it. Even more so the second shot. So, well, then, you know, maybe it's time for me to go forward and take it. So I think that while the uptake may be not as brisk as we would like at this point in time, I think I'm starting to notice some movement in a positive direction. And I think that trend will inevitably continue. I don't see any reason why it should stop. It should get better and better from here on in terms of the uptake. And, you know, we're going to see our numbers going up, and which is a good thing for the society on every level.
Okay, and Doc, here is someone called Shari Vaughn. I was also skeptical, but after speaking to Dr. Grant, I felt more comfortable, and I got the vaccine on Monday. I had a few mild symptoms, and this was expected. So there you go, proving you right somewhat. So there are some questions. Someone wants to know, can I take 2 different vaccines? I noticed our Dr. Leacock, Alwyn Leacock, has answered that and said, simple no, you can't. Don't know what the other professionals...
There's now a trial going on in Azerbaijan looking at the AstraZeneca and the Sputnik in terms of combination, and there are going to be some other trials. But Dr. Leacock is absolutely right. As of this point in time, we want persons to receive, if there's a second dose, receive the same second dose, and not to do any mixing or so of those things right now. If in due course it comes that it's possible, I think that that'll be a little skeptical, but certainly the Sputnik and the AstraZeneca are quite similar, and we may see something like that, but I don't think it's necessary for that to take place right now.
Okay, another question.
Let me jump in quickly to that answer. The principle here is simple. We follow the science.
Just
so since the
words out of my mouth.
Follow the science, that's all.
Yeah.
Okay, follow the science. Okay, someone is asking, why are so many different countries making their own vaccine for this one virus? Something doesn't seem to be right.
I don't think that that is correct. There's been a huge amount of attempts around the world, but only a handful of vaccines, I would say, 11, 12 have really emerged. I mean, in China, there are about 4, but I had expected a few more. And some of the big companies in the world have actually tried to produce vaccines, and they failed. One company producing a vaccine can also spell problems in terms of the production capacity, being able to supply all the countries of the world. Right now, there are countries of the world that have not received a single dose of vaccine. And there are others that would have purchased huge amounts of vaccines and have made orders for these things. So there are, I don't think that there is a view that there's too many vaccines. It's probably a good thing that we do have a number of them. For us, the ones that are available have been predominantly AstraZeneca and to a small extent the Sputnik.
Okay, Doc.
It seems to me there are 2 answers here. First, we don't want a monopoly on knowledge. We don't want one company or one country to monopolize the knowledge as to how you produce vaccines, in response to any specific ailment. That is the first point. Knowledge is broad, and the more people we have engaged in thinking through the issues of the vaccine, we are likely to get more vaccines, yes, but also better vaccines. So it's important to have knowledge being democratized, that many people, many scholars, many brains are engaged in thinking this through. Secondly, we also have issues of supply. If you have one person or one company alone supplying vaccines, then again, you have a bottleneck. The world has 7.7 billion people. And as far as the best scientific understanding right now is that the entire world needs to be vaccinated. There's no single country in the world that has that capacity. So, so the more people we have producing effective vaccines, the better off all of us would be.
Endorse what both Dr. Dennie and Dr. Thompson have said relative to the number of vaccines. Remember, at the start of the day, when we realized that this was becoming a pandemic and we needed a vaccine that can control the SARS-CoV-2 virus, which causes COVID, there are a number of scientific groups, companies, countries all over the world that decided they were going to throw their hat into the ring and try and tackle the problem. But as Dr. Thompson has said, only a handful have come out, and a lot of big names, Bayer, Merck, and Sanofi, and others have fallen by the wayside. So this is because, again, the science has proven that the ones that have risen to the top are the most effective, the safer, and they're quite safe, and are likely to have a significant impact on the overall pandemic, and hopefully help to return our lives to normal in a relatively short space of time, within the next year or two.
Take our second break.
Children are the future, help them read, learn, grow. Only reading is the key, so help them read, learn, grow. Let's show them how much fun it is to read, learn, grow. So parents, you play your part. First and foremost, reading from so young is advantageous. Link with the teachers, working hand in hand is a must. Just 10 minutes of your child reading to you is a plus. Get fun books, make reading priority. When children read, they are able to learn, and the more they learn, the more they grow. So parents help the kids read, learn, grow. Reading is fun, kids have to know. Read, learn, grow. The children are the future, help them read, learn, grow. So parents, you play your part.
This message is brought to you by the OECS USAID Early Learners Program, funded by United States Agency for International Development. For more information, log on to www.oecs.org/ELP. On Friday, March 5th, there'll be thousands of dollars to be won. A lotto jackpot of $155,000. A new home, car, or that college education.
Lotto, you have to be in it to win it.
Next lotto jackpot, $155,000.
More jackpot money, more reasons to play this game. More money for way. Super 6, a bigger jackpot game.
The Super 6 jackpot for Friday, March 5th is $250,000. Super 6, more jackpot money.
More jackpot money, more reasons to play this game. More money for way. Super 6, a bigger jackpot game.
Welcome back, and on Roundtable Talk today we are talking myths and misconceptions in regard to the COVID-19 vaccine, and also the issue of vaccine hesitancy. And we're talking with Doctors Grant, Thompson, and Dennie. Someone is asking, is vaccine a neurotoxin? Please answer.
Dr. Grant, you take this.
Neurotoxin essentially means neurological toxin. No, Simple answer, vaccines are not neurotoxins.
Okay, so I guess that takes care of that. Can the government of SVG verify how safe is the Russian vaccine?
From the studies, we would have gone through it in some details, but at the same time, it was also published in the Lancet. It was peer-reviewed. I was quite interested to see Dr. Anthony Fauci also comment on it, but in looking at the peer review, I think I was quite impressed with the vaccine, and it's an A+ vaccine, like the AstraZeneca, like the Moderna, like the Pfizer. They're all A+ vaccines, and I think we really can be satisfied with the safety profile of the Sputnik as well as the AstraZeneca.
Okay. How many took the jab today at Victoria Park? 1. And 2, did the amount surpass, meet, or less than you'd hope for?
We have 427 persons. That's, I think, more than what our expectations were. I think we were really and truly impressed with that. It's a good number, and it sets the stage. I understand that over the next few days we'll be seeing similar amounts, and whether some days are lower and some days might be higher, I think it's really an excellent start. It really did surpass our expectation.
Okay, so
yeah, you should do the arithmetic here. Actually, if we keep that rate, it's a rate we should try to keep. It's about 40,000 in 100 days. That's within 3 months. About nearly half of the people we need to be vaccinated would be vaccinated. So that would be an excellent rate.
And just remember, that's only Victoria Park. So if we look at the entire island, it's probably 1.5 to twice that number.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, because I think the numbers from the other health centers were in fact coming in when we left the venue. Okay. Someone is saying vaccine taboo skeptics in SVG are just copycats. They believe everything they read on social media is gospel, even without evidence. And Dr. Leacock was weighing in on the neurotoxin question. I guess they want to know if vaccines can cause neurological side effects, and that is a possibility. You can get an encephalitis following vaccination.
No. Now, we're talking about these current vaccines, and these vaccines are not really, as the AstraZeneca are not associated with that. Let us be clear about that. I want to say what tends to upset me in terms of all this back and forth are individuals who are telling other persons, if you take the vaccine, I am going to be upset with you. I'm not going to talk to you. I'm not going to associate with you. Why would somebody do that? We have 8 persons who have died. And I hold it that if an individual is discouraged from taking a vaccine and sometime later contracts this virus and they have an underlying illness that puts them in a hospital or, God forbid, causes death, I think that that is something that's a serious, serious fault of the individual who has told that person or encouraged them not to take that vaccine. An individual can decide, I don't want to take it. That's their fundamental right. But to either force or encourage somebody not to take it when you know or you believe really that they probably should because of their underlying illness, I think that that's really and truly unfair. I don't know what the other persons have to say about that.
Doctors?
Individual responsibility and and accountability. People have to to deal with their own consciences in that regard. But it seems to me that for those people who essentially preach not to take the vaccine and therefore to roll the dice and to rather than we establish herd immunity through the vaccination program, we would be attempting to establish herd immunity through natural processes. What that becomes is effectively, in some cases, mass murder, because a whole lot of people could end up dying. One of the things that happen with viruses is that they mutate, and every mutation has the capacity to be more dangerous than the original, and to actually escape previous vaccines. So the way you do that is to vaccinate everyone to block mutations altogether. So this is the problem you have when people do not vaccinate, that they contract the virus could mutate, and then we have a more virulent strain that is dangerous then to everyone else. So the vaccine.
Okay, seems as though we've lost.
Seems as though we lost
Dr. Dennie. Dr. Dennie. Okay, he's back on. He's back on, Doc.
Yes.
Okay, I was making the point that if we allow if we allow the virus to just run wild, do nothing whatsoever, assume that some of us will die, others will survive. The scale at which people would die in the United States, in Spain, in Italy, in France, those death rates can be very, very high. And in a place like St. Vincent, our population is already small. We don't want to take that risk.
Teresa, for the sake of time, I just want to touch on another fallacy that I heard today, and this is not for the first time. Someone saying that they weren't taking the vaccine because they were taking foods to build the immune system. Now, while foods can certainly help strengthen the immune system, they don't give you antibodies. And you need antibodies to fight this virus. And without the antibodies, you are exposed to virtually any outcome, from the asymptomatic form, which is not necessarily without its complications, to death and everything within that spectrum. So a lot of people out there think that, well, okay, I just have to eat good things, stick to a good diet. If that were the case, think about it. Years and years ago, our forefathers, grandparents, great-great-grandparents probably had better diets because they weren't eating any fast food, etc. But yet they died from polio, chicken pox, etc., etc. And, in spite of their good diet. So now, with vaccines coming along, it has certainly significantly reduced the incidence of significant impact from these illnesses. And a good diet with the vaccine is probably the best combination, but a good diet cannot substitute for a vaccine. And I want to make that point.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Quick question. Can someone who is breastfeeding take the vaccine?
The recommendations are that they can. There's no problem in terms of them not receiving the vaccine. The question then goes on to pregnancy, and this has been coming up quite a lot. Individuals who are pregnant, because the studies have not been done on persons who are pregnant, should not receive the vaccine unless they are at a high risk for contracting the virus in certain circumstances. And, they may well be the ones who will have to request it and so forth, or in terms of certain circumstances where they're ready. And Dr. Grant often talks about this particular aspect. But in general, pregnant persons would not be vaccinated at this point in time unless there's a high risk in terms of them catching the virus, which it'd be better to receive the vaccine and protect them from the virus in those situations.
What about if someone is... Doc, you want to comment on that?
No, I was saying certain categories of pregnant women, it may be worth them discussing the taking of the vaccine with their caretakers, healthcare takers. These are individuals who may have high blood pressure in pregnancy, diabetes in pregnancy, or have a history of clotting in pregnancy, because diabetes, high blood pressure, and clots increase your risk for the severe COVID. And pregnancy also. So coupled with pregnancy, these comorbidities significantly increase your risk for coming down with a severe form of COVID. So we're not recommending it from, certainly within this program, but we certainly do recommend that pregnant women with any of these comorbidities have a chat with their healthcare providers to see if they are a candidate for the vaccine.
Okay. Somebody's asking, will the vaccine be available for non-Vincentians currently stuck in SVG?
Absolutely. You know, I think this has been the case in Beckway. You've seen it in Union Island. You know,
yes,
we're going to see Vincentians in other parts of the world receiving the vaccine. No one has to travel back to their homeland to receive their vaccine. And so we want to vaccinate everybody here. And you know, as the time comes up, we'll certainly accommodate that.
Okay, we'll take our final break. We'll take our final break, and when we come back, Doc, we'll pick up from you.
No problem.
Back in just a moment.
On Friday, March 5th, there'll be thousands of dollars to be won. A lotto jackpot of $155,000. A new home, car, or that college education.
Lotto, you have to be in it to win it.
Next lotto jackpot, $155,000.
This evening on the VC3 News Update, the Ministry of Health, Wellness and the Environment launches vaccine drive in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. The St. Vincent and the Grenadines Community College launches Wellness is Wealth initiative, and Braxa completes construction of a new radiology room at the Levi Latham Health Center. Join us at 7 p.m. for these stories and more on the VC3 News Update.
More jackpot money, more reasons to play this game. More money for way. Super 6 a bigger jackpot game.
The Super 6 jackpot for Friday, March 5th is $250,000. Super 6, more jackpot money.
More jackpot money, more reasons to play this game. More money for way. Super 6 a bigger jackpot game.
Welcome back, and this is our final segment for today's program. Of course, we're talking myths and misconceptions relative to COVID-19 vaccine and also vaccine hesitancy here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Before we took the break, Dr. Grant was developing a point relative to the last question that was asked.
Yeah, I was saying in terms of visitors, they are temporary members of the community. And so they are part of the community, part of the herd. And we would want to, by giving the vaccine, ensure that they have a significantly reduced chance of getting it and transmitting it, especially transmitting it to Vincentians. So hence the logic in terms of making it available to them also. But, you know, it's here in Union, I would say, maybe 66 to 70% would be our own Unionites who've taken the vaccine up to now.
Someone is saying doctors in SVG are advising patients with allergies to wait before taking the vaccine. What is your take on that?
I don't think that that is really the case. There may be a particular patient who has a very severe allergy, an allergy that produces a term called anaphylaxis or something close to it, or they're unsure if it is a very severe allergy, and they would have said, look, wait. But the person who develops a little rash, hay fever, a person who might have been allergic to aspirin or, you know, one of the penicillins and so forth that isn't severe, they can go ahead and have the vaccine. As a matter of fact, it's very interesting. There's a green book in England, And the Pfizer vaccine is one of those vaccines that you can develop a small percent of allergies to. You know, very, very, very small. And they say if you have those kind of allergies, you can go to the AstraZeneca, because the AstraZeneca has a much lower risk of any sort of those type of severe allergic reactions.
Okay. Would the panel agree that the reluctance of many to take the vaccine is because it doesn't prevent contracting? Well, I guess that should be or spreading the virus?
Okay. The initial study that was done with the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine was on just a little over 20,000 patients. And they published their findings based on data collected from that cohort. Now, in the real world and the real world experience, it has shown unequivocally that the Oxford AstraZeneca reduces significantly your chances of contracting the virus. So, okay, the initial study didn't show that unequivocally. So quite often people, especially the anti-vaxxers, are referring to that old information, and science, okay, basically quite often updates itself. As new information comes in, we replace the old with the new, okay? And it is shown also that the vaccine, after the first dose, within 2 weeks and up to 90 days after, it significantly reduces your chance of transmission by up to 67%. And data coming out of Scotland, where over 1 million Scots received the Oxford AstraZeneca, and the UK, where a lot of their nursing home population were vaccinated with the Oxford AstraZeneca, it is shown that, you know, it dropped precipitously the incidence of infection, all types across the board, by over 90%. And interestingly, although the Pfizer also performed quite well, the Oxford AstraZeneca seemed to have outperformed it. So that question is a reasonable question, but it was obviously based on old information and not what is actually, you know, we have found that comes out of, you know, real world studies, real world data.
Yeah, I think that is a point that we have to repeat again and again and again, because the information coming out of England and Scotland is absolutely fabulous. The British government has been rejoicing. Numbers have been falling precipitously, as Dr. Grant said. So anyone who comes with, okay, this happened in the trial or this didn't happen, well, we actually have millions of people taking the vaccine. And we can say what's going on with those millions who take it versus those who don't. And so the evidence is clear-cut. The vaccine is overwhelmingly successful.
Real-world data from millions of people is what we are looking at. Yes, we have looked at the studies, and we're now looking on an ongoing basis at not only our data, but also that of other countries. And I'm being primarily interested also in the fact that it has reduced hospitalization by 100% and severity of illness by 100%. And also, no deaths. That is the critical thing. And so individuals, I do not want to see another person die here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And the faster we can vaccinate, I believe that we can prevent death. And I think you will see that it's those individuals who may not go and get the vaccine who are at that higher risk, sadly, for death. And persons who vaccinate, especially diabetics, hypertensives, people with all these comorbidities, as well as the elderly, and well as young people, you're going to carry home that virus to your mother, to your father. And I think that it's critical that we push that point, you know?
Okay. I want to spend the rest of the time, we have just over 5 minutes left, talking about what we can do to combat the fear, combat the misinformation, combat the mistrust, and all of these challenges that we face in trying to encourage people that it's in their best interest to get vaccinated. I don't know who wants to go first.
Well, I think, St. Vincent, we are a little dot in a much larger universe. Okay. And it's probably reasonable to say, if you take the state of Israel, okay, where Israel has already vaccinated more than half of its population, and they're all standing still. We know that the Israelis have no wish to commit mass suicide. In fact, the very opposite is true. They have done everything in the world to preserve the state of Israel. So we know this to be true, that they have taken more vaccines than anyone else in the context of their population. That should tell us something. In the United States, the president said yesterday that by end of May, we'll have vaccines to vaccinate 300 million Americans. We know all over the world, Australia, New Zealand, some of the countries who have done very, very well actually in preventing the virus from escalating, are also in Taiwan, Japan. They are also, going on a massive vaccination campaign. That should tell us something. That both our own experience and the experience of others should tell us that we should take the vaccine.
Dr. Grant?
I think programs like this and others who, follow the science and, try and demystify the myths are important. And, the more the better. I advise all patients or all individuals that I know who have been vaccinated to go out there and become advocates for the vaccine. In other words, tell the truth. Tell people what sort of side effects you had. Worst case scenarios, a bit of a headache, maybe fever, general aches and pains, loss of appetite, lethargy, but inevitably, nothing that was scary, nothing that required to even see a doctor, much less hospitalization, no severe reactions. And, you on a personal level, I had I'm now 2 weeks post-vaccine. So I am quite confident that my antibody levels are at a reasonable level. I'm not telling you that it would prevent me from getting mild disease, but more than likely severe. And it is I don't throw caution to the wind. I still wear my mask, still practice social distancing, washing hands, trying not to touch face unnecessarily. But I have that sense of confidence that the vaccine will protect me, to a significant degree. So, I think that we all have to be, who are pro-vaccine, who have received the vaccine, go out there and try and convince one or two who are sitting on the fence, and they in turn will convince others. And I think we can get there.
Got my badge. I got my COVID-19 vaccine. I got my 2 shots. And I hope for the day I could take off this mask. Can I? Oh. I can only take it off when there's about 70% of the population that's been properly vaccinated. Then we can go back to Carnival. I want to go Congo Valley for a river cook. I mean, I want to be able to go to church again. I want to do a number of things, And I want to say that this vaccine does not make women sterile. It does not have any mark of any beast. I feel stupid saying those things, but it surprised me that people believe this stuff. It doesn't have a liquid chip in it. It is not. It's not activated by 5G. Again, I want to apologize to those who may think I shouldn't say that. And then I am happy that we have a small handful of vaccines. I'd expected a lot more. And I don't believe that they were developed too quickly. I know that they went through all the phases and the steps. I know that they're safe. And I'm saying this, that as a physician, I would never want to tell any patient of mine to take something that I feel they should not take. And I believe for this country to get moving again, for this economy to start, for the world to start get moving again, for visitors to be able to come back, we want to see them vaccinated too. And for us to travel. I've got 3 daughters in New York, and I want to go up there and see my daughters and give a hug. And basically, I would love to see St. Vincent and the Grenadines well vaccinated. So I'm appealing to everybody. These myths are just myths. It's amazing the people behind them who've been pushing them and having a good laugh at us. Having a good laugh at us. But some of them are serious. And some of them are trying to make a dollar. Are trying to make a good dollar out of it. And what I want to say is that if we vaccinate, we could certainly save lives and open up this country's economy again.
And that's a perfect note on which to end this evening's edition of a Roundtable Talk. Before we go, someone wanted to know why there are so many different variants of the COVID vaccine. Doc, you dealt with that quite earlier. Are there any plans to take the vaccine drive into the prisons, mental homes,
yes.
etc.? The answer to that is a definite yes. And Alwyn is saying, you need to say, JERROL, we have highly educated people on religion saying sorcery is behind the vaccine and using scriptural quotes and prophecy. And I think that's on the perfect note on which we're going to end this evening.
Right.
Doctors, thank you again so much for coming back a second week. Dr. Dennie, all the way in Maryland, and of course, Dr. Grant in Union Island, and resident in-house advisor, Dr. Thompson. Always a pleasure to have you guys, and I'll be calling on you again. Okay? Thanks again, and see you again.
My pleasure.
Daniel.
Good seeing you, gentlemen.
Great.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Teresa
Same
Daniel
here.
saying good
Take
evening.
care.
Bye-bye.
114. Visitry. Channel 114.